I'm Adam Walker, a biometrics consultant, and this is the Pharma Prescribed Podcast, where leaders, innovators, and hidden voices in healthcare open up. No sound bites, no spin, just raw insights, one prescription at a time. In an industry driven by data, protocols, and pressure, we rarely pause to ask the human question. What drives us? What breaks us? And what truths live behind the titles we wear? Jurate Lasiene is a clinical research leader and biotech consultant specializing in rare disease clinical operations for small biopharma and biotech companies. With over 20 years bridging academia and industry, she's become the operational compass for biotechs navigating early clinical trials. Her journey began more than 2 decades ago in a newly independent Lithuania, where she stood at an airport with $400 in her pocket and a one-way ticket to America. That calculated risk, leaving everything known for everything possible, became the template for her career. Courage mixed with ruthless pragmatism. She holds a PhD in neurobiology, which shapes how she approaches both science and leadership. Her career spans both CRO and sponsor-side leadership, and she's lived and worked across 3 continents. That global experience gives her a strong understanding of cultural difference in medicine, research, communication, and decision-making. Jura, for our audience who aren't familiar with you, who are you and what is the mission you're on?
Thank you so much for having me. Who am I? It's maybe a very philosophical question, right? I am many things like many other people. I'm a mother, I'm a scientist, I'm a professional. And the mission I'm on, it's a funny word, mission, but I've had very many different starts in my life and in my career. And actually, my husband calls me a late bloomer, which I take offense with, but it's because I couldn't decide exactly what I wanted to do for a while. Because I started in literature. My bachelor's is actually English lit, and I loved creative writing. But then I came across 2 books that shook me to the core, and that's where I think I'm still on that path. One of the books was by Alexander Luria. It was about brain damage and how he worked with World War II soldiers. I believe it's World War II. And the other one was Oliver Sacks. So that's where I started to become really curious about neurobiology, neuroscience, how our brain works. And I never stopped for me. And after I got my PhD, I was already starting to understand that just understanding or trying to figure out how the brain works wasn't enough for me. I was really craving to see how biology actually works in clinic, what patients are dealing with day to day. So I think that's where, after doing my postdoc, which was out of necessity, really, because I didn't really know what to do. So after doing my postdoc in Japan, that's where I stumbled on an idea for a career that could be in clinical trials. That would bridge very interestingly my background and also my interest. So that's where I started. And the mission I'm on right now is helping those little companies that are also starting out in their clinical journey, just like I started many years ago, of bringing something unique, something that doesn't exist to rare disease patients. Families, young, old, they've been waiting to get medicine that doesn't exist, or it's not even in clinical trials. Only 5% of rare diseases have at least one drug that is dedicated to them. So there's 95% of rare diseases that they do not have any drugs. So I hope that I can contribute to increasing that percentage. That's the ultimate mission.
Thank you, Jura. That's a wonderful mission to be on. And I appreciate you sharing that insight. I'm very curious, having also worked in rare disease myself, what drew you into that particular area? Because clearly you've covered an awful lot of areas of science and clinical research in your studies. Why was it that you went down the avenue of rare disease?
Probably happened by accident, because when I was working at a CRO in the UK. I covered many different diseases, different therapeutic areas as a CRA and then project manager. And it's just the area of rare diseases just naturally drew me in because of the warmth of the physicians dealing with the patients and the patient gratefulness and grace to wait for the drugs, for treatments. It's such a special, tender area that is just really an emotional draw. I don't have anybody in my family that have particularly a certain disease. There's nothing like that. It's more just an emotional set that I just feel good being in that area. And when I was running clinical trials for example, cardiovascular diseases, they're just like hundreds of thousands of patients. You don't have that personal touch that is more motivating and more rewarding as you do in rare disease trials.
So for those of our audience who aren't familiar with the difference between rare diseases and other disease areas, would you mind just elaborating what it is that makes a rare disease so special and why those patients do identify as being different to most other patient populations?
As it's in the name, it's quite rare. And there's certain classifications. Now I forget the exact numbers. Is it like 10,000 in a million, or I can't really remember the percentage, but FDA and EMEA, they define the rare disease trials giving certain number of occurrences per population. So they're typically quite rare. There's rare diseases and there's ultra rare diseases. And I worked actually in one, I think that one of my experience illustrates that. I worked in one disease area where the patients never met another patient with the same disease. And it was the first time they met somebody else who had that genetic rare disease as themselves during the clinical trial. So that's when we also started setting up the visits that the patients and their caregivers could actually talk and hang out while they wait for a blood draw or wait for the next day for some assessment. And they would stay in the same hotel. I thought that was such an amazing opportunity for them to meet somebody like them. And also for us to create that environment where, yes, we're testing a drug. Yes, it's for commercial reasons, but at the same time, such a human side to it that we're helping them to connect, not just simply clinically prescribing for their disease. So I thought that's what's so special about rare diseases. And you don't really see that happening with somebody who has high cholesterol or something like that.
That's a brilliant example and a wonderful insight to share. As you were describing that, I was thinking about patient advocacy as well around these particular rare diseases, because invariably, as you say, patients and their caregivers do not come across many other people, certainly not locally. Have you had much experience? And I wonder if you can speak to patient advocacy, because effectively what you're doing is you're opening up the doors to those conversations for these people, aren't you?
Yes, it's very important to engage with patient advocacy if they exist for that disease, because there's not that many. Not every disease has patient advocacy or advocacy at all. Some are so rare that nobody even tries to study the disease. So if a patient advocacy group exists, it's very important for a company to engage with them, not just for looks, but actually truly understand how you can design a clinical trial, because that will save money at the end. So there's a commercial reason. And it will also give you an insight of what those patients are going through, especially if, as a company, you don't have a lot of experience, a practical experience of day-to-day living with such a disease.
Yeah. Following on from that point, I'm wondering, for these individuals that are experiencing whatever conditions they're in, how have you expanded those opportunities more broadly as an independent person? Because by very definition, you're working in a niche area, you're offering a niche service. That's got to be a tough job to try and fulfill as an independent consultant, isn't it? How do you overcome that?
How do I overcome? I don't think I understand the question.
Sorry, I'll rephrase it. It seems like a very difficult way to try and find work in and around rare diseases,
Oh.
being an independent consultant in a niche field.
Yeah.
How do you broaden that opportunity?
Actually, I don't think it's that hard, frankly, for a couple of reasons. First of all, there's more and more research in rare diseases, which is amazing because of the regulatory frameworks that have changed in the past and are still changing because of advocacy of patients and companies, right? So there's more and more research. And then I think it's very important that your work with your companies and with your clients speak for yourself, that they suggest to their friends, because typically they're all friends. In this is such a small niche, it seems like we know a lot of people that know people. So yeah, I think it's very important that your work speaks for yourself. And then in AI age that has dawned upon us, I think it's important to build a personal brand so that people approach you already knowing who you are, that you're not a robot, that you're not a project manager that has just been assigned by a company to run your trial, but who you actually are and what it means to work with you as a human being. There's so many of us that do have expertise, experience. Yes, we're unique in different ways, but at the same time, we do offer similar services. But then you work with people, right?
Definitely people work with people. People remember the way you make them feel, the experiences they had when they worked with you. And it was something that we touched upon before we hit record earlier, wasn't it? A podcast is an opportunity to be able to push your brand out there as much as your skills, your capabilities, what it's like to perhaps interact with Jura. What would people say about you that have worked with you, Jura?
That I'm brutally honest. That probably comes from the culture I'm from. I'm extremely straightforward and brutally honest, but I care extremely deeply for their success because it's not just their success. It's not just me earning money. It's truly the goal down the line. We're incredibly lucky to work in an industry that offers hope. There's a lot of bad rap about big pharma, about practices, but truly, when I've been working in this area for so long, what I see is a lot of incredibly passionate and I would say even crazy people, because about 94% of biotech actually fail, that they embark on this journey driven by the desire to make a world better place for those people that need it. Money doesn't hurt, obviously, but it's really not that money never drove people to do what they do, to work 80-hour weeks, to sacrifice their personal lives to achieve goals. So, yeah, I think we're incredibly lucky. And I think I'm getting away from your answer. But anyway, yeah, so I think it's very easy to work with me as long as we're all in open communication and we see what we think. That's very important.
As I said to you before, this is about the true stories behind the life science people that present themselves on LinkedIn and on all the platforms and the companies that we represent. I'm also curious to know what sacrifices you have made, because quite clearly you've traveled extensively, you've worked extensively. I'd love to know how that has defined you as a person as much as given you skills and capabilities that you wouldn't otherwise have got had you not left your hometown.
Yeah, so I have lived around the globe, literally, and the sacrifices are very small in comparison. The biggest sacrifice, I'd say, I don't have the extended network of friends and family that you're so deeply rooted in that this is your world. My world cannot be defined by deeply rooted relationships that run from childhood. I lost that because I was away for a long time from my home country. Yes, I do interact with some friends. Yes, family is there. But that community feeling that I've known this street pothole that was paved 3 times over, I don't have that. So that's the sacrifice I had to give. that's the sacrifice. But then what I gained in return, I know how pothole looks in Japan, in UK, in the US, in Ecuador, in Mexico. I know that because I've been there. I've driven over that pothole. The same time, I've connected with incredible people around the globe that shaped me in who I am. You learn that you're not as special or as unique as you think you are in that little deeply rooted network, which gives you so much security. But then at the same time, it doesn't give you enough perspective. As you leave, it truly opens the whole world. Then you know that you can shape reality into how you want it to be. I think that's a sacrifice and what I gain.
I think it's a brilliant answer, and thank you for elaborating on that. One other thing I also want to give you enormous credit for, your language in English is phenomenal. I wonder how many languages you speak, because I know you lived in Tokyo and you've mentioned several other countries where you've lived. How many languages do you comfortably speak these days?
I'm fluent only in 3. So I don't speak that many. I'm actually not, I don't really like learning languages, to tell you the truth.
And what are
It's
those
very
3?
difficult.
What are those 3?
So it's Lithuanian, English, and Russian.
So how was it in Tokyo? Was that difficult? Was that a blast to the senses? What was it like for you?
I felt like archaeologist on Mars. It's a different world. It's a different planet. Yes, they're human. Yes, they're people. Everything really works. But then you have such a strange sense of being so outside the culture and the daily living that it's almost uncomfortable, but at the same time, it's comforting because you disappear in the masses that is just, you're irrelevant. But then at the same time, when you are on a metro, you stick out like a sore thumb. Very strange, very strange. I gained so much personally. I had to have a lot of retrospection, especially coming from the US, where everything's loud, fast-paced, big thinking, big opportunities, big houses. And I move into a closet where the kitchen, which I love to cook, I even had a bakery business in Tokyo. My kitchen all of a sudden is the size of a table in the US. Such a huge shift, honestly. It's like from one extreme to another.
That's amazing insight. Circling back to the industry and coming back to the rare disease area in which you're working, I'm just wondering, you did allude to it earlier with regards to some of the changes that you're seeing. In your experience over the last 20 or so years of working in this area, what are the changes that you've seen and what do you see for the future? Because things are moving at some pace now, aren't they? I think we can all agree with technology and the advent of incredible technologies. I'd just love to know your perspective on that, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I think the biggest barrier for rare diseases research has been obviously money, funding, and the payout, right? It's just because it's still a business. So the money you invest, you should have a reasonable return. And clinical research is incredibly expensive. So I think, yes, the regulatory framework made it easier, a little bit less friction for smaller companies, or for bigger companies. For rare diseases, you have orphan disease designation, which actually helps. But within technology, with the AI, if we could reduce the costs for clinical research and time frame, because really time is money, that's exactly what's the biggest impediment to get to the reward or to the market. If we could reduce time and money, then the payout naturally will be there because it's just a return on your investment. So if we invest less, but the same quality, this is because some of the research or some of the time we spent could be less. That needs to be instituted by regulatory authorities so that more companies get into this area and there is more pay return on your investment down the line. It's just naturally People do care. These are incredibly interesting diseases, and incredible personal motivation, I think, for many is just increasing that return on our investment or increasing the chances. I think naturally it will just then keep moving in the right direction.
So what is the best way that you, our audience, can keep up with the rapid changes that are happening? Are these things happening incrementally in your experience, or are we seeing a complete seismic shift towards something we've never experienced before in a rapid period of time in the rare disease space?
I don't think it's actually happening fast enough in the clinical trials in general, because it's still humans. You still need to get a drug to them. So AI will not do everything that needs to be done by far at all. We're still actually working with human fluids, so to speak, that has nothing to do with AI. What AI can help us and will make a change, which actually the same for any industry or any of us. It will be faster. We need less time to do automatic tasks, manual tasks, and all of those things. But that's why this niche is so interesting, because it is human bodies that we're dealing with, right? And AI cannot take over that. It can help us get there faster, but it will never take over. At least that's my thought. At first, I was incredibly worried and scared. I was like, that's it, there goes my job. And now that I work with the AIs myself on a daily basis, I'm like, oh, no, my job's not going anywhere. They can't do what I do. But I don't need it larger of a team anymore to build what I need to build. So that's where the truly big change is coming. But seismic change in a way that, oh, electricity was discovered, that's happening for us. But for, as I keep saying, bodily fluids, that's not it. It's still there. We're still humans. We're still biology. We're still a pile of bones and blood.
I think that's a rich insight that you provide there, and that's probably reassuring for many of our audience. On the flip side, I do hear people talking about digital twins, effectively recreating those results from bodies, from blood draws, and comparing those. Have you had any experience of that, or could you speak to that particular point?
I can't, not yet. I haven't seen that yet, but just translating research from mice into humans, same blood, right? It's still biology. It doesn't work that straightforward. What works in a mouse doesn't work in a human. And just because we mapped our genes, it doesn't mean we can recreate a human experience with the nurture aspect, which is too complex to model yet. If we can model all of that, fantastic. But when you even look at real twin research, biome, for example, microbiome, right? It can be just as different as people that are never related. I think we're too complex, but might be, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but I personally haven't had experience with that yet. It's still quite traditional. Research is still quite traditional. That's more my problem, actually. It's too traditional. The processes are too traditional, too heavy. So I haven't seen the science fiction that we are thinking is happening in clinics. It's very limited so far.
Again, I'm really reassured to hear that, Jura, because, as I say, I want there to be not just a career for me to see out my days, but also for the next generation of life scientists that listen to this podcast, who are curious to know how they can push the door open and what those new opportunities look like in coming into this industry. What do you think the next generation should be preparing themselves for?
Critical thinking, that they are creative without AI help, and truly understanding how they can yield AI advantages for their future careers. Actually, my husband asked that because he's an educator. My husband asked that. He's, what would you tell your daughter? I have 2 daughters. I'm like, what would you tell her to study? I'm like, actually, I don't really care, first of all, what she studies. But if I truly had to say something, I'm like, something that actually will require human to human interaction. That's what I think matters. But most of all, it matters how you connect things. Critical thinking, I think, is more important than anything else. How do you connect things? That's why we're so incredibly amazed how AI connects different areas and comes out with insights that we can think of. So it's really learning how you connect. That's where I think the next generation will have a better advantage, because AI will just gonna get better. Maybe robotics will get better and we'll start seeing fewer people needing for different jobs. But how you connect, how you interact, and who you are as a personal brand, I think that's where we're going right now.
I 100% agree with that. And funnily enough, I have similar sorts of conversations with my university age kids now as well. The thing that I say to them more than anything else is attention. Give people your attention. Don't be distracted. When you're doing one thing, just do it, but do it to the best of your abilities. Don't be distracted by your phone, by your notifications, whatever there are. I think those are the things that for me, as I've got older with technology in our lifetime, the phone and tablets that we now take as just being everywhere, I think distraction is the greatest thing that we have to push against. And you will understand this more than most being an academic. Ultimately, that was your bread and butter when you first came into this industry. It was academia. You can't do that without fully focusing and deep intentional learning. Is that fair?
It is fair. It is fair. You basically get consumed by one question, right? All your thoughts, everything you do is taken by this one question you're working on. And when I look like at my daughter, here's the phone, here's another Snapchat, here's this, and then there's this. And then I'm like, when are you actually putting your pants on? Like you're still not fully dressed. Wow, how are you going to deal with that? I don't know. We'll see.
It's a ridiculous thing to think about, but actually preparing the next generation for life, working life, communicative life, and all the skills that are required in order to really succeed in whatever industry, whatever particular area they decide
Maybe
to.
that's what they're going to need. They're going to need to deal with all the pop-ups all the time, and they're never going to get out of their sweatpants. Who knows?
I don't know. It doesn't work for me. I just find it just
We're
too
too old
overwhelming.
for this.
Exactly. My brain was never built that way. So it doesn't work for me that way either. Is there anything that we have not touched on today, Jura, that you'd like to just elaborate further upon? Because I'm aware that your experiences are so broad and so vast. I want to do you justice on this podcast and give you the opportunity just to tell your truth. And is there any particular areas you'd like to just talk further about that we haven't touched on?
Now I'm just thinking what I wish companies and clients that I work with would know, that it's incredibly important to have early conversations with somebody that understands clinical trials, clinical operations. Even before you go into clinic, it's good to start thinking and having those conversations. Half an hour will not cost you anything. And then upfront investment into somebody that understands where you need to go will pay off many times over. I know how strapped for cash the little companies are, but the thing is, help people like me help you to save you money so you're more successful. And the reason is we need those ideas working. We need those drugs, technologies, you name it, getting to the patients. And I really am so saddened by smaller companies sabotaging their own success because they don't really know where it's best to invest their money that is so limited anyway. And they end up actually wasting so much money, so much time, and not surviving. That's what I'm deeply saddened about.
So circling back to that original mission, it sounds like what you're saying is ultimately you can save people money and time and effort by a very small conversation at the earliest stage of clinical development that could ultimately play out much better for them. those biotechs and small pharma companies?
I believe so. I truly believe so. And then just involving in the beginning of truly what it means to strategically go into clinic, just planning, take your time. It's really important to think about it because by the time they have something working in a mouse or an idea, and they're like, okay, next clinical trial. Oh, let's see, maybe a couple $100 and we're going to be done. And you're like, they don't understand that they're stepping into now $1 million game and then $10 million game and then $100 million game. So they really need to plan accordingly. And those that have been on this path, they know how important it is to plan. And those who haven't, they should learn from those who have.
I think that's a really wonderful, refreshing lens to hear your insights from. And I appreciate you elaborating on that because perhaps that wasn't a question I was going to ask, but I'm delighted that you managed to bring that in. At this point in the conversation, Jura, I like to finish with a quick fire round.
Let's try.
So I'm wondering, what is the one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
That's so funny. I wrote on LinkedIn about it. Doesn't matter what I'd say now, I would have never listened. I'm an extremely stubborn person. I was a very stubborn young person. But if I was able to listen, I would say don't be afraid to take risks. What I learned about myself by changing throughout my career and making those pretty big changes, that it's okay to take that first step and be in a limbo for a little bit. It's okay. That's what I would say. Don't be afraid to take a risk.
Embrace the discomfort.
Yes, of not knowing. I think it's incredibly difficult when you don't know. Well, will you survive? Will you have money? Will you be satisfied? Will you do? What if it's not safe? It's all right. It's actually all right. You will figure it out.
What are the top 3 qualities you value most when building a team?
Number one, they have to care for what they do. If they're not present, if they don't care, it doesn't matter how much experience they have, it's simply not going to be good enough. It's just not. They have to care of what they do. Then they have to be able to make mistakes, be okay about it, and learn from them. Extremely important. And third, just be a nice person. Simply a nice person that we can talk to, we can hang out, we can laugh, we can cry. Just be a normal, nice person.
I think that's wonderful. What is your favorite thing outside of work?
I love working. No, I really love a good meal. My goodness, I actually travel for restaurants. My family always complain that our agenda is going through best restaurants that I can find in the country.
And finally, what is your number one golden rule in life and in business?
Let's see if I can distill it down to a golden rule. I can't swear, right? So
You can say whatever you want.
like, just don't be an asshole.
That will serve you very well, that principle.
It's true.
I agree. You might work with one once, but you won't work with them twice and certainly not 3 times.
No.
I agree. Jura, we've had a wonderful conversation. We've covered all manner of different aspects around your travels, your experiences across the world, your life from academia into what you now do in the rare disease space. And I really do appreciate the candidness with which you've answered my questions and the conversation that we've had. It's been a delight to just get to know you a little bit better over the course of this recording. For those of our audience who'd like to reach out to you and make contact with you, what's the best way to make contact?
Yeah, LinkedIn is the easiest way, and it's very easy to find me. Jurate Lasas. Yeah, just reach out, DM. So that's the easiest.
And a further point I wanted to make, just the connection that we have, that we discovered that we have together, in the fact that my family actually come from the village where you now, or the town where you now live. City, I'll get it right in a minute.
Capital.
Capital, Vilnius. Oh my goodness me. I'm hoping at some point to visit that lovely city. and continue the conversation with you. It's been a delight to get to know you, as I say, Jura, this morning. And thank you for coming on Pharma Prescribed.
Thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.